This week, the House Oversight Committee released a nearly 5 hour long deposition with a man who at one point was closely affiliated with Jeffrey Epstein. That man's name is Les Wexner. He's a billionaire who founded L Brands, which at one point controlled both Victoria's Secret and Bath and Body Works. Now, during this deposition, Wexner repeatedly denied that he had any knowledge of the crimes that Jeffrey Epstein was committing and that he cut him off once he found out that Jeffrey Epstein was stealing from him. Whether or not people believe Leslie Wexner about everything he's saying during this is still a question left to be answered. On Thursday, the House Oversight Committee released the entire video deposition of Leslie Wexner. But considering that it's almost 5 hours long, most people haven't had time to sit through and watch the entire thing. But there is one moment that has captured the internet's attention.
All the things were inventoried. That wasn't work for me or Jeffrey. It was just regularly done. Answer that question.
Answer the question.
As CNN's Caitlin Collins describes it, this is a remarkable moment from Les Wexner's deposition where his attorney basically tells him to shut up. And if you missed that, Wexner's attorney leaned over and said he would kill him if he answered another question with more than 5 words. Ironically, this moment took place well into the deposition, and it raises a lot of questions. If Wexner isn't going to give full and complete answers to these questions, then how on earth are these victims of Epstein's crimes supposed to get any justice? As we'll get into in a second, Wexner repeatedly deflected from questions about his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. But what we already know is that Wexner was one of Epstein's most significant clients. Epstein even had power of attorney over Wexner's multi-billion-dollar estate at one point. And the relationship between Wexner and Epstein wasn't just financial. One of the reasons why Wexner was being questioned is because one of the most prominent Epstein survivors, Maria Farmer, said she was sexually assaulted by Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell on one of Wexner's Ohio properties that Epstein had control over during the 1990s. Maria Farmer's allegations first surfaced in this affidavit she filed in a separate case involving a separate Epstein victim, Virginia Jeffrey. Her case was against Epstein's former lawyer, Alan Dershowitz. But in her affidavit, Maria Farmer walked through the timeline of her allegations against both Epstein and Wexner. Although Maria Farmer says she never met or spoke with Leslie Wexner, she still holds him responsible. In her affidavit, Maria Farmer describes how she first came into contact with Jeffrey Epstein through the art world. She was a working artist at the time in New York City, and Epstein said he could help her out with her art career. But initially, Maria Farmer's job was to actually man the door of Epstein's Manhattan residence, which is where she saw Alan Dershowitz entering at the same time as a lot of young girls, who Farmer was told were auditioning for modeling contracts, although she highly doubted this. Then in the summer of 1996, Maria Farmer says that Epstein arranged for her to work on an art project at an Ohio residence belonging to Leslie Wexner. She says she went to Ohio and stayed on the property with her two younger brothers. At the same time, her then 15-year-old sister, Annie Farmer, became a target of Epstein's interest. And Maria Farmer says that Annie was simultaneously being sexually assaulted by Epstein at his New Mexico property, although she didn't know that until years later. Maria Farmer wrote in her affidavit that during the same summer of 1996, when she was working on her art project at Wexner's mansion, Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein came to Wexner's mansion. She wrote, "They asked me to come into a bedroom with them and then proceeded to sexually assault me against my will. I fled from the room and called the sheriff's office, but did not get any response. The Wexner's security staff refused to let me leave the property. I pleaded with them, and my father drove up from Kentucky to Ohio to help me. I was held against my will for approximately 12 hours until I was ultimately allowed to leave with my father. Upon my return to New York, I went to the New York 6th Precinct Police Department for help, and they counseled me to contact the FBI to make a report about the assault in Ohio. I called the FBI and made the report, but to my knowledge, the FBI did not take any action against Epstein or Maxwell. To my knowledge, I was the first person to report Maxwell and Epstein to the FBI. It took a significant amount of bravery for me to make that call because I knew how incredibly powerful and influential both Epstein and Maxwell were, particularly in the art community. She then goes on to describe how Epstein and Maxwell attempted to ruin her life and career moving forward, even though she never received any justice in her report or case, and that they ultimately succeeded and she was blacklisted from the art world. Now, in 2019, after Epstein was arrested in New York on federal sex trafficking charges, the Washington Post interviewed Maria Farmer about these allegations, and she said she held Leslie Wexner at least partially responsible. Specifically, the Washington Post reported she never met Leslie, and she says she spoke to Abigail, his wife, only by phone while at the New Albany home. But she says she holds him responsible for what happened to me because the alleged assault happened at the hands of one of his closest advisors on property Farmer says was monitored by Abigail and the Wexner security team. She says that she was held against her will at the property by Wexner's security staff after her alleged assault until her father came to pick her up. Leslie and Abigail Wexner have repeatedly denied any connection or knowledge of these allegations, but Maria Farmer says she was discouraged by their security staff from going outside without getting permission from Abigail Wexner, who she says she spoke to by phone multiple times that summer, although never met her in person. She was a runner, but said she had to jog inside Epstein's 10,600 square foot house. Quote, where I stayed that summer in that house and working in that garage, all of it was within view of the Wexner house. And this is what Maria Farmer on the right and her sister Annie Farmer on the left looked like in this summer of 1996. So to be clear, on this massive New Albany, Ohio property owned by Wexner, Epstein had his own house, but it was, quote, effectively the guest house for the main Wexner estate, according to the Washington Post, and it was guarded only by Wexner personnel. The Post goes on to write, in the mid-1990s, Wexner so trusted Epstein that he arranged for homes for him in Ohio and New York, according to public records. He granted Epstein power of attorney, enabling him to sign checks, hire people, and buy real estate on his behalf, court records show. He hired Epstein as president of his real estate development company and named him a trustee of his charitable foundation. Disturbingly enough, Wexner's name is all over buildings in the Columbus, Ohio area, including Ohio State University, the Wexner Medical Center, the Wexner Center for the Arts, and the Abigail Wexner Research Institute at Nationwide Children's Hospitals. And perhaps most disturbingly, Abigail Wexner founded an anti-domestic violence organization called the Columbus Coalition Against Family Violence. But as all of this started to come to light in 2019, the Wexners said they had cut Epstein off decades prior because he was stealing from them and misappropriating funds, although they never filed a lawsuit against him. And in his deposition released yesterday, Wexner answered questions about this, although some of those answers raised more questions in response. So, first of all, let's examine how Leslie Wexner responded to questions about Maria Farmer's testimony.
Mr. Wexner, Epstein survivor Maria Farmer was reportedly brought to the guest house located on your property in 1996.
Objection. He's already told you it wasn't on his property.
I am bringing up the recollection of an Epstein survivor for the record. Your client is welcome to provide a statement. So again, Maria Farmer was reportedly brought to the guest house in 1996. She stayed there for a summer and claimed she was assaulted there by Mr. Epstein and Miss Maxwell. Mr. Wexner, do you recall who Maria Farmer is?
I know her name from the press.
Did you ever meet Maria Farmer?
Never.
Is it your testimony today that you do not know whether Maria Farmer ever stayed on your property?
That would be correct.
Do you have any reason to not believe Maria Farmer's account of being abused by Jeffrey Epstein on your property?
Objection. On his property.
Let me be sure I answered this correctly. I never met her, didn't know she was here, didn't know she was abused.
you have a large staff that works on your property in New Albany?
The reason I'm laughing, I don't know. There's a lot of people around, but I don't know how many.
Can you estimate how many people are working on the property at any given time?
<clears throat> 20.
Do you have private security on the property?
I've had private security since 1975.
Are you aware of allegations that security staff on the property stayed with Maria Farmer until her family was able to pick her up?
I didn't know she was here, so I didn't know her. I didn't know she was here, so I didn't know shit about her. Pardon me.
So, this is how Leslie Wexner responds to questions about allegations that a young woman was sexually assaulted on a property surrounded by his property by someone who he trusted as his power of attorney at that time. He actually chuckles even now, years after Epstein's death, decades after he claims he severed ties with Epstein, and has nothing to say. It's incredibly disrespectful to Maria Farmer, who is still alive, who is still fighting for justice in this case. Plus, we're supposed to believe that Leslie Wexner has no idea who's on his property, no idea who works for him, no idea what's happening less than a mile away from him at any given time, no clue how many employees he has, no idea what his security staff is doing, no idea where his money's going, no idea who's coming and going from his property. He doesn't have any clue about any of that. Yet this is a man who took one store and built a multi-billion-dollar empire off of it. This idea that he's playing dumb and has no recollection or any idea about anything going on in his own backyard, just seems a little bit fishy. Later on in this deposition, Wexner was asked about allegations that he took part in some of Epstein's crimes.
We previously mentioned accusations from Maria Farmer, and there were a subsequent set of allegations from another individual. Are you aware of who Virginia Giuffre is?
No. Familiar name, but I've heard it, but I don't connect it to anything.
Did you ever have any sexual contact of any kind with Miss Giuffre?
No. I've had contact something I don't even know.
Miss Giuffre has accused you of performing sexual acts with her multiple times. You dispute these allegations?
She must be confused. No, it never happened.
So again, we have Leslie Wexner laughing when asked about allegations of sexual assault. And not only are these allegations of such a serious nature, but they were also made by Virginia Giuffre, who tragically died by suicide just a few years ago. So again, we're supposed to believe this man, who was excommunicated from the companies and foundations he built over his connection to the Jeffrey Epstein case, has not been following along with any of the key figures in the Epstein case for all these years. We're supposed to believe that he has barely any recollection of who Virginia Giuffre is. It just doesn't ring credible. Instead, throughout this nearly 5-hour deposition, Leslie Wexner claims again and again that he was manipulated, he was conned, he had no idea about anything that was happening to him all of these times. He says that Epstein was one of the greatest con men, and he was simply a victim to that.
Speculation, because he would tell him that. But he told me he was friends. I mean, if you told me that you were friends with Bill Clinton, I would believe it. Or if anybody told me somebody was a friend, I would believe it. I think the perspective that I have now, and I think what's really important for this group to understand, is that as I look back at it, I was conned by the world Olympic all-time con artist. And you look at, I read in the news all the people he knew, royalty, kings, princes, and all that. An incredible con artist.
So let me ask you what's more likely. Is it that all of these billionaires, world leaders, and famed academics were all simultaneously conned by this one guy, Jeffrey Epstein? Or is it more likely that these people had a semblance of an idea what Epstein was actually up to, and they just chose to go along with it and in the process enable it? And they're all trying to deflect from that responsibility now that everyone in the world is aware of what actually happened. What seems more likely? And then, with regards to why his relationship with Epstein supposedly ended, Wexner says he and his wife discovered that Epstein was stealing from them and misappropriating their funds. But when asked why he didn't attempt to hold Epstein accountable for this is what Wexner said.
To follow the money consistently. The other question, and this will be my last. You claim that you have been a victim and defrauded by Epstein, correct?
Correct.
Then why didn't you file charges, go after him? He used money to hurt girls and probably young men. Why didn't you do anything to recoup your name, which has been synonymous with Epstein? Do you know your name comes up in the emails among victims who never met you, but your name was used consistently?
I'm not sure I understand what the question to
The
him is.
question is, why didn't you file any charges against Epstein if you conned you of $200 million that we know of? Why didn't you go after him?
Well, at the time I didn't know.
But when you
And
found out, why didn't you go after him? Is it because he was a good friend?
no,
You had.
my dad is probably laughing. You know,
No,
one of the
I
things,
know.
one of the things my dad told me that you don't get a pissing contest with an elephant. And running a public company for a long time, I'm not good at public relations or financial public relations. And so I would answer questions to analysts. I'd call people up and I'd tell them the truth. And what I learned in the course of my business career is whether it was my chief of staff, the company lawyer, personal lawyers, what should I do? And the advice is, let us handle it. You don't want to get ahead of this. So I'm happy that today is happening
Good.
because I want to help and I would do everything I can to nail that son of a bitch. And
Because they might be hurting
Please let him,
more.
please let him finish.
and I can't tell you how much I value my own ethics, my own moral compass, that it has a true north. And what I think happened, now knowing about all the cons, is that Jeffrey would tell somebody that they were me or this was somebody else. Like, you and I've never met, right? I don't recognize you, but you're a congresswoman. I think, because,
Yeah, I never met you, but you're all over the emails.
yeah, but so I presume you're a congresswoman and I presume you're not a man in women's clothing. I don't know what I didn't know. And
I understand.
this is,
You know now, and we can do something about it.
oh yeah,
So again, we have Leslie Wexner failing to answer the question, which is why didn't you report Epstein for conning and defrauding you if that were really the case and that was really why you ended your relationship with him? And Wexner can't answer this question. He dances around it in circles. He deflects and goes off on different tangents, but he can't get to the heart of the issue here. And again, he's continuing to laugh, he's continuing to make jokes, and he's continuing to say, I want to help. I want to help get justice now that I found out that was really going on. But if he really wanted to help and get justice, then he'd be answering these questions fully and directly and truthfully. But instead, we have that clip of his lawyer telling him, I will kill you if you answer any of these questions with more than 5 words. So it doesn't actually seem like Wexner is interested in getting to the bottom of this, or that he's really all that interested in getting justice for these victims and survivors, because he keeps repeatedly claiming he doesn't even know who they are, knows very little about their claims, even the claims that directly relate to him. Here's how Wexner answered when he was pressed about whether he had a friendship with Jeffrey Epstein in addition to a business relationship, based on a birthday card he sent him signed "Your Friend."
preparation for today's meeting.
Did you yourself write this letter to Mr. Epstein?
Sadly, I did.
Did Miss Maxwell approach you to write this letter for Mr. Epstein's birthday?
I think the request was to write a card or a note or something for a birthday book.
And did that come from Miss Maxwell?
I don't remember.
Mr. Wexner, would you please read the main body of the birthday note for the record, please?
I wanted to get you what you want. So here it is. Happy birthday, your friend Leslie.
And what was your understanding of what Mr. Epstein would want?
He was a bachelor, so I drew a pair of boobs.
You've
As a kind of a joke and offhandedly, I'd say.
understand.
I hope you do.
You've said a few times throughout this deposition today that you did not consider Mr. Epstein a friend of yours. However, you signed this letter, and I quote, "Your friend Leslie." Why would you sign "your friend Leslie" to someone you did not consider to be a friend of yours?
I don't know. I normally say Les, not Leslie, either when I write notes, and I guess I could. I can't explain why I would say your friend because we weren't friends.
It's truly infuriating to watch these men sit there and smirk when presented with evidence to the contrary of this portrait of contrition they are painting about their relationship with Jeffrey Epstein and any culpability that they had in his numerous crimes against girls and women. Why are you laughing about sending a deceased sex trafficker a birthday card with a pair of breasts drawn on it? Why is that funny to you, Leslie Wexner? And the remaining question is anyone actually going to be held accountable for any of this? Because deposing Leslie Wexner in front of members of Congress is good. It's something that needed to happen. Being able to hear his half-hearted responses to these questions publicly is also good and is something that needed to happen. But what comes next after this? Are these answers and this conduct from Leslie Wexner and his lawyer considered acceptable at the highest level of government enforcement? Because if that's the case, if this is where it ends, if these people just get to sit here and deny that they had any knowledge or involvement with any of the wrongdoing, does that mean that just nothing gets done in cases of systemic, widespread decades of child sexual abuse? Because if that's the case, then we have a lot more to worry about than just Jeffrey Epstein. Leslie Wexner can sit here and say he doesn't remember these things that happened decades ago, but for the victims and survivors of Jeffrey Epstein, these memories are far too painful, and the consequences on their lives were far too long to ever forget. So what a privilege it is for him that he just has to endure this line of questioning for 5 hours, because then he gets to go home to his mansion in Ohio, where he claims he has no idea what's going on there. The same cannot be said for the rest of us. So my hope is that this isn't the end, and that this isn't the best our government can do, because we're now looking at 4 decades since Maria Farmer filed that initial FBI report and nothing was done. And nothing is going to get better until something else happens.